beyond the headlines. And now to our interview with the second guest of the day. I'm joined by the Chief Executive Officer of the Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprise, Muda Yusuf, for discussion on Naira's struggle against the dollar. Thank you so much for joining us, sir.
Thank you very much, Jumoke. My pleasure to be with you.
Yes, same here. So we're going to start this conversation this way. When the new administration unified the forex window and floated the Naira, we thought the free fall of the Naira will reduce. Why does the value of the Naira continue to fall?
Well, quite a number of factors have been responsible for the rapid depreciation in the exchange rate. The first is the challenge of speculative activities. There are quite a number of individuals and corporate entities that are making demands for dollar in the economy. Not all of them are engaged in real economic activities. There are quite a sizable number that are making demands for dollars, not because they want to import anything, not because they have any business they are doing, but because of speculative activities. For some, that is an arena for business. They speculate on the currency in the belief that once this currency depreciates, they'll be able to sell and make some margin. Some also speculate on the currency just to get the currency and have it as a store of value. And there are also instances, of course, of people who have illicit funds. The level of corruption in the economy. And some of these illicit funds can be substantial. And when you have a market that's a bit liberal, where all manner of people can come in and make demands, such illicit funds also find their ways into the market. And for somebody who did not work for the money, has a lot of slush funds, they could buy the dollar at any rate. So these are some of the factors. And of course, we have the backlog of unmet foreign exchange demand. Under the previous dispensation, we had huge backlog of forex demand that were not met. An example is the outstanding payment to the airlines, which is about $800 million, which is the highest, according to IATA, is the highest anywhere in the world. So all of these pressures coming together at the same time, exerted an enormous pressure on the foreign exchange market. And of course, in the midst of all of this, the government also had to, service the Euro bond. That is $500 million. At a time when there was also limited capacity by the central bank to intervene in the foreign exchange markets. So basically, these are the factors. And of course, again, just to add, is the fact that because we have deregulated the downstream sector, and because the private players in the petroleum downstream now have the liberty to import petroleum products. By the time you also put that demand on the market, you can imagine the enormity of the pressure. So there's a huge pressure of demand on the foreign exchange market, and the capacity to meet that demand is quite weak. So that is what has led to the weakening of confidence and to the very intense speculative activities on the currency.
So what's also responsible for the arbitrage gap, which now stands at about 206 Naira to $1, if not higher?
Well, the challenge is that, first, when there is a breakdown or a deterioration in the level of confidence, there's always a rush on the currency, almost like a run on the currency. And because not all the demands can be met at the official window, which is the I&E window, there's a lot of spillover to the parallel market. And the more you have this spillover, the higher the pressure on the parallel market and the higher the depreciation in the currency in the parallel market. So increasingly, as confidence deteriorates, more and more people are going to the parallel market because the demand cannot be met at the official window. So basically, it's a question of the capacity to meet demand and the capacity to sustain confidence. Because not all the people who are demanding the currency need the currency immediately. Some need it to store, some need it to, launder money and all of that. So all those factors are there. So that is what has led to the widening gap between the official window and the parallel market window. But I must say that this policy direction is the way to go. Of course, we needed to define the limit, which is what the central bank has done. We cannot afford to leave the currency entirely to market forces or to freely float the currency. From time to time, the Apex Bank has a responsibility to intervene to stabilize. And if you look at the rates over the last 1 month or so, the rate in the official window has been fairly stable. The current concern now is the widening gap between the official window and the parallel market window, which of course could create distortions and create arbitrage opportunities. And I'm aware, going by what the acting central bank governor said yesterday, that something is being done to address this confidence crisis in the foreign exchange market.
But can we really stop round tripping?
Well, round tripping, first, there has to be a lot more vigilance in the market. Because all over the world, even in the most advanced economies, you are not allowed to just demand for foreign exchange just anyhow. There is need for closer monitoring, and there is need for, much stronger institutions to ensure better credibility in the entire ecosystem of our foreign exchange management. That is important because you need to control some of these things. If people are making demands that are suspicious, you should call them out. They should be called to question. And there has to be consequences. I'm aware that under the previous, the suspended CBN governor, there are quite a number of accounts that were suspended, but recently some of those accounts were unblocked. I don't have the details, but it is possible that some of those accounts were involved in all these shady deals in the foreign exchange market. So there is need for a lot more vigilance, even as we pursue this market-led strategy of managing the currency. There is need for vigilance to ensure that those who are demanding the currency, whether in the parallel market, the bureau de change, or in the official window, are genuinely demanding it for concrete economic activities, not for speculative activities. So that is important. Then, of course, the way to also reduce this is to ensure that we are able to build confidence and we're able to meet demand in the official window. If that is happening, the need for demand to spill over to the parallel market will be reduced. And if there's a reduction in pressure in the parallel market, the gap will continue to narrow. I mean, the first 2 or 3 weeks of the introduction of this new foreign exchange management, we didn't see any serious gap. In fact, there was a time when the official rate was even higher than the parallel market rate. But suddenly, we saw this surge in demand on both the parallel market and the official window, and at that point, we began to see this kind of swing or deterioration in the exchange rate. So some of these things also need to be properly investigated to ensure that all these extraneous variables that are distorting the assumptions and all the policy arrangements, all those things are put in check. That is very important.
Dr. Yusuf, the CBN has vowed to crack down on currency speculators. How will you advise the Apex Bank to go about this?
Well, it's to use intelligence, to use data, and to monitor the flow of funds within the system, to monitor those who are demanding for this currency. It has to be effectively monitored. And once there's evidence that these things are driven by speculative activities, or there's evidence that some of these funds that are being used are illicit funds that people cannot account for, there has to be consequences. I'm sure that is what led to the closure of some accounts. Well, the CBN now has reversed some of those things, but they need to go back and check properly so that you don't unleash all these illicit funds and these sharp practices on the market. So that is what I think the CBN can do, in addition to ensuring that we sustain confidence, because at the heart of all of these things is confidence. If we're able to instill confidence that if you need the currency, you get it, in the official window, you don't have to bribe anybody or something. If you have that, then less people will be going to the parallel market and the gap will narrow. And I'm happy that recently, just this evening, I had a news that the NNPC has been able to strike a deal with Afrexim Bank of $3 billion to be able to stabilize the market. That is good news as far as I'm concerned, because it's not all the time that you go borrowing to IMF and all of that, or to the Eurobond market. If you have credible companies, you have strategic assets that you can leverage on to raise funds at a more concessionary rate, that is also a solution. So with that, we are likely to see a reduction in some of these speculative activities and a restoration of some level of confidence in the market.